So we've got an offline question from Shamgel, our guy. Break down the quarterbacks offered for the 22 class. How do they compare to what is already on the roster?
So first of all, Notre Dame offered Drew Allar yesterday, which I was thrilled about.
You've been talking about him for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He is an interesting kid because if you're someone who likes player comps, he's Josh Allen from the Bills, right? Like super raw prospect. Like, he's a guy that as a quarterback's coach, I would love because there's so much. He's like a wild stallion, and you got to break him first. But when you do, boy, he's going to be something special.
Yeah.
6'5", 220, prototype NFL size that, that prototype size, I think, which I don't think is as relevant anymore. But if you can find it, great.
Yeah, right.
It's just not to me as needed as it was 15, 20 years ago. Big time arm. But he's also sort of a modern quarterback in that he's not like a 6'5", drops in the pocket, hit your reads, make your throws, which is kind of how I see Steve Angeli. Steve Angeli is a traditional pocket passer. This kid is more of a gunslinger. This kid will throw 3/4 over the top, sidearm, off platform, and he's a gunslinger. He understands touch. He will hit touch. I watched him in the one full game I watched. He bangs a corner route from maybe 15, 20 yards for a touchdown from the far hash. Now, the far hash in high school is a lot farther than the far hash in college, and just floats it right over top, just drops it in. I mean, it was just a gorgeous throw. He's real raw, though. I mean, that's the thing you have to understand is you may not see it on the highlights, but when you watch him in games, you're like, he'll sail a couple, and you're like, oh boy, you got put a little bit too much mustard on that one, and he'll rush this through his reads because he's still an up and coming quarterback. I think he only started like maybe half of his sophomore year, and then of course he's played 10 games this year, so he's still developing. But you just can't find this kind of physical talent very often. And this is a kid that's been on campus in Notre Dame in the past, likes Notre Dame. So my hope is that they can make a hard push for him, because if they were to land, if he wanted to commit tomorrow, he's a take. Steve Angeli for me is not a take right now. I'd want to see how some other guys perform. Ty Simpson's another kid they offered. He's not coming to Notre Dame. All the crystal balls at 247 Sports are for Alabama. A week before that, they were all for Clemson. That's kind of who the battle is. Notre Dame's not in that one. They waited too late. And I'm okay, because I'm not as in love with Ty Simpson as the National Recruiting Services are. I don't know if his skill set's going to translate as well. I'd rather have Drew Allar or my other favorite quarterback in this class, which is Gavin Wimsatt from Kentucky.
Right. Yeah, I know there's an article on irishbreakdown.com about Wimsatt.
Right. I did a breakdown of him.
Yeah.
And he's a raw kid, needs some polish, but he's more polished than Drew Allar. Really loose arm, live arm. He also can throw off platform, but he's more of a natural pocket passer, I think, right now than Drew Allar. And the thing I love about Gavin Wimsatt is, I had somebody say, is he a lot like Brandon Wimbush? And I was like, no, not at all. Because Brandon Wimbush to me in college was a runner first, thrower second. Gavin Wimsatt is he's a quarterback that happens to be really athletic. And what I like about that is he'll run around, but he's always got his eyes downfield looking to throw. He's not that guy that, if it breaks down, kind of like Lamar Jackson was coming out of high school. Lamar had to learn to kind of sit in the pocket, go through your progressions, make your throws. And when he did that at Louisville, he was a really, really good quarterback. I mean, he was a tremendous talent. Well, Gavin already kind of has that natural feel of he wants to throw it first, but if it breaks down, he'll take off running. Okay. And a lot of his runs in high school, a lot of his production are on scrambles from pass plays. It's not designed runs. So he's not a guy you're going to call 15 power reads and read zones for. He's more of a RPO. He's more of a, from an athletic standpoint, more of like an Ian Book type. He's a better athlete than Ian Book was, but more of a, he's going to throw it in a lot of his production. Like Ian Book ran for a lot of yards in Notre Dame. Not a lot of it was on like designed quarterback runs. It was scrambles. And I think that's where I think Gavin Wimsatt would fit that, but he just has better overall arm talent. Now, he doesn't have the power as a thrower that Drew Allar has, because Drew Allar has a bazooka. Gavin Wimsatt doesn't have that kind of arm talent, but it's plenty good enough. I mean, he's got a strong arm. It's just not that cannon that Brandon Wimbush. That's another reason I don't think he compares to Brandon. Brandon Wimbush had a bazooka for an arm. He just couldn't always harness it the way you need it. Sure. I think Gavin Wimsatt would be a lot easier to harness his talent because there's so much natural. He just, you watch guys, Vince, and you're like, this kid's really raw mechanically, but this kid was just born to play quarterback, right? Like he just gets it. He's a natural. He's smart. He has a feel for it. That's Gavin Wimsatt to me. You get him with the right quarterbacks coach who can work on footwork and timing and progressions and all that. He's got a chance to be a special player. And he's a top 50 ranked kid too. So, to me, they have 2 quarterbacks on the board right now that have offers that if they wanted to commit right now, I'd take it. And that's Drew Allar and Gavin Wimsatt. If one of those 2 guys wanted to come, I'd take him right now. There's one other quarterback they haven't offered that I think they should offer. And that's Sam Horn he's from the state of Georgia. He is a top 50 caliber player too. He has a lot of interest in Notre Dame. They're still sort of in the feeling him out process. I don't know if they're going to recruit him or not. He is a pure pocket passer. To me, he is a better, stronger armed, a little bit more he's definitely more athletic version of Mac Jones in high school. When I say Mac Jones, I'm referring to sort of that style of play,
right?
But better physical tools, and really smart kid. Plays against, the best competition. They played Grayson twice last year, once in the playoffs, once in the regular season. Grayson's a powerhouse down there. So he plays big time high school football. The only thing I don't like about him is he wears number 21. And I just have this thing about quarterbacks that wear numbers in the 20s, but he's a natural quarterback. He is a pure passer, smart. His timing as a sophomore and junior, as a thrower, Vince, is way beyond his years. Just his ability to anticipate guys coming open, getting the ball out on time. And he's kind of got that thin body that once he fills out a little bit and gets into a college weight room, you're going to see a jump in his arm talent or arm strength as well. But that's the other quarterback that I would offer and throw into the mix. And then for me, if it was up to me, you push for those 3 kids and you take the first one that wants to come. That's kind of how I would look at it. So you say, which guy do you want? Any of them. So Allar, Wimsatt, or Horn, you give me any of those 3 guys in this class, that's big time. Because what I feel Notre Dame needed in this class is a guy that can challenge the guys already on campus.
Yep.
Say, well, Tyler Buckner's the future. Well, so then you're not going to take a guy that maybe might be better than him someday. That's what you want. But the other part of it is that I like about Allar and Wimsatt is if you take a super high ceiling player that needs more time to develop, then that's perfect.
Yeah.
Because now they can, if Tyler Buckner is the guy, and I think most people anticipate that he will be, he plays as a freshman. This kid comes in a year later when Tyler Buckner's a sophomore. This kid redshirts. And then when Tyler Buckner's a junior, this kid's a redshirt freshman. Right? That's great time, great spacing for those 2 kids. So that is kind of how, Chamjo, that's how I would break down the quarterback board.
So I was kind of sifting through the questions here, and since we're talking about the quarterbacks in that 22 class, Nick wants to know, he'd be interested to hear your thoughts on Notre Dame's chances with Allar. Who's the competition that you're aware of? What are Notre Dame's chances? I know you said you take them, but who are they competing against?
I think they have a very good chance. His offer list, Vince, has really just started to take off. Penn State, I think, is a legit contender for him. But they also offered relatively recently. Michigan is going to be a contender for him. Obviously, Michigan does well with Ohio kids. They also offered relatively recently. So I think Notre Dame needed to get into the mix quickly. They were about 2 weeks away from being too late. So I'm glad that they offered I would have liked to see them offer earlier, but that's fine. You're still in a relatively early window. I'm glad they did their due diligence or whatever, but they offered and I think they're going to be a legit player. It's not a situation where I think he's going to commit tomorrow, but
right.
But if they put on the full court press, they're going to be tough to beat for him. Like I said, this is a kid that's visited Notre Dame before. This is a kid that likes Notre Dame. This is a kid that, I had one conversation with him and there was he was very, his answers were very what you'd want a smart big time quarterback to be. But you can just, when you've been doing this as long as I have, you kind of get a sense of, yeah, he's just saying that because he thinks that's what I want to hear. And then there's a sense you're like, okay, this kid's trying to be guarded, but you can sense there's a deeper connection or emotion behind his comment. Sure. And that's kind of the read that I got from him. But they got to put in the work. They got to put on because Penn State's going to put the full court press on. It's a big year for Penn State at quarterback, big year. And he's the kind of guy they want to get. And I was actually a little concerned so there was a time when it looked like Texas might try to flip the Ewers kid that's going to Ohio State, the kid from Texas that's the number 1 player in the country that's committed to Ohio State. If they would have flipped him, that would have made me nervous because then Ohio State would have got in with Drew Allar. But Texas went and signed that big time quarterback from California. So now Texas is good. They're not going to try to flip that kid, and I don't see anybody else flipping him from Ohio State. So I think that would have been the biggest concern I would have had if Ohio State would have thrown their hat in the ring.
Okay. Here's a